Are we really going to do this? Are we really going to? We just got clobbered with young people. We got clobbered by males. We got clobbered by identity politics. And you're going to wade right back into this? Jesus Christ, has anybody ever learned anything?
Okay, the 100-day marker, James. Trump calls it the most important ever. Atlantic, in a good piece, said it's consequential. I agree. It's very consequential in a very negative way. The central markers, I think, if you look at it over 100 days, he inherited one of the best economies in our lifetime. First quarter showed negative growth. Maybe a little statistical quirk, but it is really it's the canary in the coal mine. We are the economy which he inherited, which was so good. He is in the process of if not destroying, certainly taking down. He set historic records for incompetence. Pete Hegseth, we've never had a more incompetent defense secretary, a danger to national security. Only question is when they have to dump him. RFK Jr. at HHS is endangering lives. The Justice Department is a department that only believes in justice for the Trump world and seeking retribution against any of his perceived enemies. I really think all this is undeniable. He's shown contempt for the rule of law. He's seriously damaged alliances, which we can talk about later. But James, the central question I think you should ask, even after 100 days, is what has he done to improve the lives of any Americans? A lot of bombast, a lot of boasting, but he went out to Michigan. But that welder in Macomb or Oakland counties, how is his or her life any better than it was 100 days ago? It's not. Now, polls virtually across the board are bad. And he always underperforms, I know, when he can bounce back. I think this time is different. I think that people are catching on to him. His policies are creating, this is all self-inflicted. You know, it has been a consequential presidency, James, but in that short time, he's taken us to a very dark place that's going to take us a while to get out of.
Well, you're right. And the real tragedy here is you can have fluctuations in people's lives. You can have fluctuations in the economy. Of course, this is not anything. This is no fluctuation. This was all done by Donald Trump, his policies, and his big, stupid mouth. So the United States has had a bad 101 days. Let's be very, very, very clear on that. And, you know, they talk about, well, remember, Kevin Hassett, Trump's chief economic advisor, the head of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, said in February that he expected 2.5% growth in the first quarter. So if you don't even know what you're doing, if the people advising you have no idea of what's going on around him, and now you have all this kind of rush to say, well, could be some statistical noise. I don't know if it's really, down 0.3% because the imports, it was bad. It was really bad. And, the markets are not buying it, clearly. The usual apologetic brigade, or have it say. But I have a question. I'm willing to ask this question. Third quarter, why is third quarter really big? Well, it matters growth. The GDP numbers matter a lot to markets, and it actually reflects everything. The third quarter number is going to be reported at the end of October. What happens at the beginning of November? Virginia and New Jersey governor. We need a blowout. So the numbers speak for themselves, and let Kevin Hassett keep running his ignorant, stupid, fat mouth, predicting 2.5% growth where you don't even know where he is. He's advising on something he has no understanding, no appreciation of. They got these clowns, buffoons, idiots, Howard Lutnick. I mean, good God Almighty. So we're in a tough go here. We're just in a tough go, and it's been a bad 100 days, 101 days, and I don't think the next 201 gonna get any better.
Yeah, you're right. Because look ahead. those tariffs, which hurt a teeny bit in the first quarter, they really haven't started to bite yet. They will bite. Even if he starts to throw in the white flag, they're going to bite, and they're going to hurt a lot more in the months ahead. That's got to hurt his poll ratings even more. And when it comes to the budget, Congress hasn't cut a dime. They've said, we're going to. This is our plan. They haven't told you how. So in the months ahead, they face the dilemma of trying to extend tax cuts for the rich while cutting Medicaid. That is a disaster for them. And whatever they do, I just can't see what's the bright spot for him in the months ahead.
Well, the Democrats can make it really big. So let's talk about rope-a-dope. Now remember, rope-a-dope lasted to about the 6th round. All right. Mm-hmm. Then when George Foreman was exhausted in the rumble in the jungle, then it kicked in. Okay. The rope-a-dope era is over. He's exhausted. His numbers are down. He took them down himself. Now we have two things that can define the Democratic Party, and there has to be unanimity on this, and there has to be unanimity of messaging. Fight the tax cut, the corporate tax cuts. In fact, you could even talk about raising the corporate tax slightly if you wanted to, but fine. Talk about tax cuts for people making over $400,000 a year. Talk about how much the deficit is, how much that's going to cost young people. It's $4.5 trillion. This is not chump change. Then link this, and this is very important. You have to link. They're going after diabetes research. Yes, that's correct. They did. They cut a grant to the University of Michigan that Bobby can't even know about. They're completely decimating the weather service when we're going to have an active hurricane here. God knows what we have in tornadoes and fires and all the other crap we got coming. And now they're going to go after ordinary people, low and middle income people's health care through Medicaid. They're going to destroy rural hospitals. Why? They're going to take that money and give it to their friends and donors. Link the two. Give motive and don't get off of this. Don't talk about it and make these votes come up. And these votes are going to come up. They're going to have to take these votes. And if they do, make them pay maximum penalty. I'm beginning to think they might not be able to put it together. They just may not be able to get they're not going to get any Democrats. I don't think any Democrat is even tempted to be for any of this. That's a non-starter for if you ever saw one. So make them pay. Make them fight for every vote. Make them pay for every vote. Make every Republican pay that goes in there, and stay focused on this. You feel free to start swinging, but be targeted. Go right for the jaw. And the jaw is ordinary people paying for tax cuts for rich people when ordinary people don't have anything to pay and rich people have too much. Yeah. Nothing could be simpler. Nothing should get in the way of this. Nothing.
James, I would say both you and I thought this was going to be bad. We're not surprised that it's really, really bad the first 101 days. There was one thing that I did miscalculate on. I thought surrounding himself with nothing but loyalists and sycophants, that there would be less chaos because they would all say, yes, sir, whatever you want. There's more. What I neglected is when you tap incompetent people to take jobs, by definition, they're going to produce chaos because they don't know what the hell they're doing. We see that at the Pentagon. We see that at the IRS. We see that at HHS. We see that in other places. And this, if anything, is a more chaotic administration than Trump 1.0.
So, of course, it's been, we think we can imagine it bad. We imagine it really bad. It's actually been worse than we imagined. But when this started, there was a 5% feeling that people had, Democrats had, he's inheriting a pretty good economy, actually. Mm-hmm. It might, who knows, it could get better. They couldn't screw it up. Some chance some of this might work. Well, we now know there was no chance that it would ever work. It's been bigger than we could even imagine. In fact, you look at the news and it gets so bad, you say, well, this is bad for Trump. But the United States has had a bad 101 days. And boy, I can't imagine. I think this thing, we talked about it on the phone. I think this thing in Canada is I don't know, call it a political earthquake.
Yeah, let me pick up
Something
on
like
that because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it was a big deal 3 months ago. Reliable poll had the Conservatives up 27 points. Trudeau stepped down. This guy, Mark Carney, took over. He was going to be the Kamala Harris because the party was very unpopular and they still were going to lose. But then something happened. What was it, James? You and I know it was Donald Trump. And Donald Trump cost the Conservatives that election. Carney won by 2.5 points, more than Trump won, by the way. The Conservative leader lost his seat. And I think you and I have talked about this. This is a harbinger. It's not just Canada, it's alliances around the world. People don't think America can be trusted anymore. And I think that Canadian election was terribly important. And one final point, Jill Abramson pointed us to a report by Bridgewater, a big hedge fund company that, pretty smart people. And they say the Trump policies, and I'm quoting Bridgewater, imperils the existing world order. This is really, really bad.
Well, yeah, I could go on and quote Howard Marks at Oak Tree or any number of other people that say that the whole international trading system, the whole status of the dollar, that's how bad it is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to Canada. I've been working in international politics since 1993. I cannot remember, and in front of our listeners can help me. We'll be glad to read your letter, that any time in a democracy, a unpopular incumbent government has a 27-point lead going 3 months before the election and
A
loses
disadvantage.
the election by 2.5.
Yeah.
I don't believe that anything like that remotely has ever happened. I have seen instances where an unknown comes up and really charges and picks up a lot of points. That's eminently possible. When you have a known government, I think it was in power for 18 years. The candidate was a completely known. He was like the chair of the Federal Reserve Bank. All right, he was the status quo on steroids. You couldn't be any more status quo than Carney was. Yet he wins the thing. And the only explanation that you could possibly come up with, it was Donald Trump. And I understand there's a border. Canadians have a different tradition, they have different customs than Americans that have always been our best ally, one of our favorite countries. But they're not that different than us. And the fact that this happened is I think, is really underappreciated. It's significant. Now, we'll see what happens because our next big test, and I keep coming back to this, is Virginia. And they're falling apart. And we just got to really bring it home on these tax cuts and on these cuts to Medicaid, health, weather, you name it. I mean, they're destroying they're not just destroying themselves in the Republican Party, they are trying to destroy the United States of America. I believe that.
Well, James, you're right. And let me just stay on the global thing for a minute. About 3 years ago, we went to a very small dinner party. There were 3 ambassadors there from American allies, 2 from Asian countries, 1 from Europe. And they all said, this is 2022, I think, they said their home offices would ask one central question: is America's return to normalcy permanent, or, as one said, assess the likelihood of a Trump type return? They didn't get a Trump type return. They got Trump. And he's changing the world order to America's detriment. And the second anecdote is about 12 years ago, we went over to Vietnam on a vacation. And our friend Tommy Vallely, who's a Marine veteran, critical in repairing relations with that country, insisted we see their top officials. James, it was stunning. They all want America support. They all saw America as a buffer to China. They could be an important ally, and they've tried. They got a crummy government, but they've been an important ally in Asia. Trump is going to drive him back to China. That's what he's doing. And in 2028, if we elect a Wes Moore and Andy Bashir and Alyssa Slotkin, cause for great celebration. But our long national nightmare won't be over. It's going to take years, maybe decades, to repair the damage that Trump is inflicting.
I think when historians or archaeologists or whatever in the future start asking themselves what happened to the dominant nation in the world, when they unearth it, I think part of it will start with the Trans-Pacific Pact, which was every Pacific nation from Chile to United States to Canada, Japan, South Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, New Zealand. I can't name all the countries that decided to form a trading bloc to deal with the Chinese. They actually wanted to beat the Chinese. And of course, Trump stupidly took us out of it. I mean, really stupid. So they're saying, well, so now they've done this. We have come together to try to form a trade bloc. We've really pissed the Chinese off. Now we're sitting here naked. Then they come with this whole crap that puts the whole trading system, the predominance of the dollar, every trade agreement we ever made, and they're starting to cut separate deals. Like, we can't depend on these people. And if countries have to, they'll cut a deal with an odious country like China. And people are starting to do that. And it's hard to blame them because they'll say, we don't know what the United States is going to do. These people are goddamn crazy. And we're going to pay for this. You're going to pay for it at the checkout counter. You're going to pay for it with your mortgage rates. You're going to pay for it when you go abroad and try to spend a dollar. We're going to pay for this. And we have got to take this regime and we got to just clobber them to show that's not what the United States is. That I know it's a long wait, but I don't know what happens when this guy is. I think there's a good chance he's just going to fail by the end of the summer.
Well, James, if he does, the senior senator from South Carolina has a solution. He is pushing Donald Trump to be the next pope. I know. Huh? What do you think of it, James?
I mean, I thought when a friend of mine told me, I started laughing. And then I read what Lindsey Graham said. This is a question. Okay, so I don't much care for Lindsey Graham's politics. He seems on the surface, I know him, a kind of an affable guy.
Yeah.
Does this man have any sense of self-dignity? Does he have any sense of, I hear the conservative principles. I like to do this. I don't want to make a fool of myself. I just don't understand it. I would love for him to explain what the fuck were you thinking? You ought to say, well, maybe he did it as a spoof. No, if you read it, you had the feeling this fool was really serious about this. In no sense of, like, if I did something like that, man, I couldn't face my kids. I don't know what I'd do.
Well, I've said this before, but Christopher Buckley, the brilliant writer, in one of his novels has Lindsey Graham in it, and his name is Squiggly Tea Biscuit. It seems to me that's even more appropriate today. But in any event,
biscuit has some value, but it's good. It's a good description. But it's just it's just stunning how the human beings and just lose all dignity, all self-awareness, all principle, all anything. It's just stunning.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, at some point, man, my question to Lindsey Graham is, for what? What did you get out of it? Okay, you stayed in the United States Senate. You had a driver. You had a staff. What? And you're gonna.
That's all he has, James. It's his whole life. He has nothing else. He has nothing else, and that's actually sad. Okay, let's move on to our outrage, James Carville. if I can find mine. Okay. All right. And now for the outrage of the week. One of the Trump presidency's, quote, innovations, end quote, is to democratize the White House press corps. Really kind of sublimating the role of organizations like the Associated Press and bringing in social media fans who ask searching questions like, and I'm going to just read them. One of them asked the press secretary, does the administration have any comment on leftist state and local officials denying ICE and Trump's deportation efforts? Man, that is a tough one. Another one was, can you release the president's fitness plan? He looks healthier than ever. Is he working out with Bobby Kennedy? That's something that all of America is interested in knowing. But my favorite, which I got from the Drudge Report, is that one of the influencers that Miss Levitt brought in was a woman named Cambry Nelson, who recently suggested, I'm not making this up, James, she suggested that the moon was missing for 7 days. The moon just disappeared. And finally, she located it, but there was some controversy over its color when they finally found it. But thank goodness she has found the moon, and thank goodness, move over Peter Baker and move over Caitlin Collins. We got the Moon Brigade coming in to take over the White House press briefings.
I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's very justified. For my outrage, I want to talk about the Democrats, and I want to talk about David Hogg. David Hogg said what I thought and called out was a really stupid, pathetic thing. He was a vice chair at the DNC. He was elected, and he said he was going to raise $20 million to primary certain Democrats. I said, that's an outrage. You can't. Make a long story short, I did an appearance of David Hogg yesterday. He is a 25-year-old guy. He's very passionate. He's very smart. He said a stupid thing. Okay. And now the DNC is now talking about a candidate who failed a Democratic National Committee leadership is challenging her defeat. The first threat to the DNC Vice Chair David Hogg vowed to keep backing the same party on the incumbent. Okay. The Credentials Committee will be May 12th to consider a challenge from Caitlin Free, a Native American attorney and party activist, lost vice chairman to David Hogg at the party's February 1st meeting. In her complaint shared with Semaphore by a Democratic source, Free argued she would lost a totally flawed election that violated DNC charter and discriminated against 3 women of color candidates, and asked for 2 new vice chair elections in February after several rounds of voting. The race came down to 5 candidates: Kenyatta, Hogg, Free, and 2 other women. Kenyatta and Hogg claimed the open spots. All right. By aggregating votes across the DNC process by its own charter and bylaws, Free filed a challenge on February 20th. Members informed yesterday be taken up February 12th. Are we really going to do this? Are we really going to? We just got clobbered with young people. We got clobbered by males. We got clobbered by identity politics. And you're going to wade right back into this? Jesus Christ, has anybody ever learned anything? David Hogg made a mistake. Ken Martin should call him in, reading the Riot Act, pass a resolution saying you can't do this, and get on with life. But if we're going to chase every goddamn 25-year-old that says some jackass thing out of the party and under the grounds of some allocated positions based on gender or ethnicity or whatever the fuck they do, we're just doing the same thing. We never learn.
Well,
we never learn.
I don't know how it happened. You're right about it. It's just terrible. And he may have an excuse, but it makes Chairman Ken Martin look really bad. He better somehow come up with some way to correct this.
You know, I tell you, if they do this, I just look. You can do this kind of stuff, and maybe you're motivated by it. You saw what happened. All right, you saw what happened with young voters. You saw what happened to male voters. You saw what happened, the staggering unpopularity of this. And you're going to go right back into it? I mean, come on. I mean, I'm waiting to see what Ken Martin says. But, man, he better get this thing settled.
A lot of pressure on you.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Ken Martin.
Chairman Martin, we're gonna revisit this in ensuing weeks.